Did we lose?
Hi, everyone. I'm Martie Washington, and welcome to Aspects of Training for E-MDTs. Thank you so much for joining us today. I would like to start by giving a nod to the Office on Victims of Crime and thank them for not only sponsoring this webinar, but also funding the activities of your E-MDTs. And remind you that any of the thoughts, conclusions, recommendations you hear today are those of the author and don't necessarily reflect the Department of Justice or the Office for Victims of Crime. Next slide, please. If you're not speaking, mute would be great so we can cut down on background noise. And I see that you all have your name on your Zoom square, so thank you for that. Use the chat if you have questions. We'll keep an eye on it. And let me know if you have any technical assistance issues at mwashington@ncall.us. Next slide. You have Lisa Furr and myself. I'm the program coordinator at the National Clearinghouse on Abusein Later Life, and I am technical assistance provider for Abusein Later Life grantees. And I'm also a training partner with CEASE and the National Center on these webinars. And Lisa, introduce yourself.
Hi, folks. My name's Lisa Furr. I work with Lifespan of Greater Rochester and also part of the TA team with the folks at Weill, Cornell, CEASE, and very glad to be sharing my first love with you, which is training. That's probably not true. My first love was probably dogs and then camping and then training. So really glad to be talking about that with everyone. And Khi-Lynn, I think, will be joining us shortly. So, well, y'all know Khi-Lynn, who is at Weill Cornell and is the lead technical assistance advisor on this project.
Okay. Today, we're going to not only talk about not training as a whole, but really how do you assess what your community needs for training, what your team needs, determine what kind of opportunities there might be available to train E-MDT teams. There are benefits to having internal and additionally external training. So we'll talk about that a bit, and engaging with broad audiences. So with that, I am going to launch a poll. And the question is, are you seeing it?
Yes.
How many trainings have you had for your team? If you could just pick one of those, that would be great. Okay. Almost there. Almost everybody's answered it. Okay. So most people have done 1 to 3 trainings, and then the rest a little bit have done over 7. So there's nobody in the middle. Either people are newbies to training or they've done 1 million of them. That's what we're seeing here. If you can see, that's how they answered. Okay. Thank you for that.
All right. So we have Khi-Lynn who will be taking the next slide. And Khi-Lynn, I'm advancing the slides for you.
Thank you.
Martie, can you get rid of the quiz?
I closed it out.
Everybody. So there are various ways to train within your E-MDT. Sometimes people develop a committee. There are 1 or 2 people in the room, depending on the size of your E-MDT, that may be able to kind of put together different trainings and things of that nature. The other thing is cross-training. When you have multiple professionals in the room, you have accessibility to everyone. And with everyone there at the table, you can bring them to the E-MDT and have them bring their specialty into the room and really give people insight on that specific specialty. You can also bring people in. We've did this a lot in New York City. We were able to bring in people who specialized in Medicaid, or someone who specialized in housing and things of that nature. We would bring them in as we saw that need, and we would have them talk to the group about that specific program to educate us on how we can assist older adults, and then also for us to have that information for the victims that we saw at the E-MDT. Also, case study is a great way to bring in a case to utilize time and resources. There are great case studies available online. There are a few on the DOJ website, on E-MDT section. So there are case studies that you can utilize. You can watch videos. The National Center, we have videos up on different things on the E-MDT, such as kind of like hybrid meetings, how to utilize a specialist, things of that nature online, and you can watch those videos. Intel also has great videos for you guys to watch, to do trainings on. And then you can also utilize webinar recordings. The National Center also records our webinars, and they're also available publicly, so you can also utilize that. You can pull up a webinar. You can also submit a request to your TA provider and say, hey, I remember there was a webinar on financial exploitation. Can you send that to me? Or I heard there was a one on forensic investigation. We're actually starting to do that within my team. Can you send that? So again, there are different ways to bring trainings into your E-MDT. So current training opportunities. What does your team's data tell you about your training needs? What trends are emerging, and what training is currently available in your community? So these are some of the questions that you want to ask, and really take pulse as you're continuing to work with your team. Sometimes you'll deal with cases where they're like, all the cases are coming up, or at least 5 or 6 cases coming up have a housing component to it. Then that might say to you, hey, I might need to have a housing webinar. Some of the trends that are coming up, we found that we had a lot of cases where there were family members who were a part of the home care program that came in and was getting paid to take care of an older adult. And we had a lot of our financial exploitation victims kind of taken victim to that kind of scam. And so we were able to utilize that trend and be able to kind of train our team on that particular trend. And then when you talk about trainings that are available in your community, in the same way that E-MDT coordinators, we provide trainings to others about elder abuse and things of that nature. Sometimes there are programs that have trainings such as APS, victims of older adults. Different programs really do have trainings that will be available to come to your E-MDT. I know Medicaid will send someone out, and some other programs as well. So we kind of talked about internal trainings, and we'll talk later about external trainings. So when you're talking about internal trainings for your E-MDT, you want to plan ahead, because let's be honest about it. Sometimes you have partners and people who are sitting at the table who have limited time to kind of work on these cases and kind of do these things. So you want to make sure that you decide whether you're going to have trainings monthly, if you want to do something quarterly or every other meeting. You might also decide, hey, these are particular dates that we can utilize for our meeting. We can say every second meeting we're going to do a training. It really depends on the needs of your team and the availability of the partners that sit at your table. When you are moving ahead, you want to make sure you're reaching out. You want to research what trainings are available in your community, kind of take a pulse on what other programs are out there that will provide training. A lot of times there are programs that provide trainings for free, and you can just ask them to come in. There are some programs that even provide lunch and snacks when they are providing a training. So look out for those ones. Speak to partners. They may cover certain training topics. Different people that sit at your table. I know we used to have a program, the Jewish Association for Serving the Aging, which was JASA, and they would provide trainings on different topics when it came to elder abuse and just working with older adults. You also want to utilize the resources that are available to you. If you're currently in a meeting space, you might want to see if that space is available for your trainings, if you're going to have them monthly or quarterly. You want to contact the
I sent you
center.
an email
Sorry,
with a
Jeff,
little.
I'm sorry. Oh, thank you. So you can also contact the Center for Resources or possible trainers. We have a plethora of presenters that we work with. And so it gives us the availability to tell you, hey, this might be a great person for this particular topic, things of that nature. So feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. And again, another thing about the center, not just for trainers, but we also, if you're thinking about topics and things like that, you can speak to any TA advisor and they can walk you through the process.
I had to let the dogs out. Are you good? Ready to advance?
Yes, ma'am. So effects of training, it really helps to expand the knowledge of the team. One of the or the best feedback that I received as an E-MDT coordinator is that grantees or our members said that they would receive 3 hours of training on elder abuse just being in the room. Outside of the training that we were bringing in, people were learning different things about how to reach out to older adults, how to ask certain questions, what to assess and what to look for. Adding more value to joining the E-MDT, again, having that feedback. I could say with joining my E-MDT, you're going to receive hands-on training. You'll receive some information, some insight from different professionals sitting at the table. It also added resource to the team in case professionals work with. So again, being able to call in and say, hey, I have a forensic accountant that sits on the team. They can look at these documents, or, I have a medical professional that can really tell us the details about what's going on here with this older adult. And then gaining opportunities for sustainability. Again, kind of talking to those professionals and different partners at your table. It's an opportunity to say, hey, this is what my team brings, and this might be an opportunity to partner up. It may also be an opportunity to say, okay, these are my numbers to different grants and different programs. I'm able to process this many cases. We were able to kind of develop a plan for this many older adults, and it gives you an opportunity to come up with some of the information that you may need to sustain your E-MDT when you're talking about data.
Okay, so bear with me, and I hope my voice will hold out. So Khi-Lynn talked about training internally with your team. We're going to switch a little bit now to looking at training within the community, and figuring out how, why, and what kinds of training to do outside of your team. One of the first things is, well, somebody asks you. And the important thing to remember is just because an organization asks you to come and present doesn't necessarily mean it would be the right fit for you to do that. If all of your time is working with the multidisciplinary team and they want somebody to come and talk about older adults as a population, that might be something better for one of your community partners, unless it gets you in the door with an agency that you've been trying to get a relationship with. So you've got to kind of explore those kinds of things. The other thing is that you might do training because your E-MDT has determined that that there are some issues going on. For example, perhaps firefighters rescue EMT emergency personnel are, being called multiple times to an individual's home and not making any referrals or not sharing that information with law enforcement or adult protective services, and that person is deteriorating in such a way that perhaps you need to look at whether it's self-neglect or someone else is involved, or banks have consistently not played nice, so you start to reach out to banks and ask to do some training with them. It might be that the coalition, the statewide coalition, or the coordinated community response, whose task it is to look at the systems, have identified needs as well. That agencies aren't playing nice together, that things are going on where they don't have a good understanding. And so you decide to do a panel presentation to ensure that the members of your team get to be introduced to a specific agency to build those relationships. And then oftentimes needs assessment are done by the area agency on aging or some nonprofit that has determined that there's a gap in knowledge in this particular area, and it's one that y'all could step into. So you want to look at that training from two perspectives. What do the learners want to get from the training? What is it that they showed up for? So I'm assuming that y'all came because you looked over the goals that we put forth, the learning objectives, and said, that's what I need to know. But so that's one way of doing that. But there's also things that the trainers, that the E-MDT members, other partners or stakeholders want the learners to get. So as I spoke about, if you've seen gaps in services, if you've seen folks not responding to older adults in a way that is helpful or moves cases forward, you might do a training with the intention of changing their behavior by giving them the information that they need to do their jobs better. You have to kind of be careful about when you're saying what other people should be doing, though, because we don't have their jobs. So, what kind of training and for whom? Going to that second part of that question. It should be driven by the community needs. What do you want to happen out of that training because of that training? So, if you want to influence these different disciplines and you want the law enforcement to respond in a certain way, you want them to have a baseline education on what elder abuse is. You want them to be informed about the codes in your tribal community or in your city or state, and you want to ensure that they have that information. So you say, this is what I want them to do, and therefore you ensure that those things are a part of your training. The one thing to think about is, do you have connections with those disciplines? A lot of times the education goes better if you have a co-trainer from that particular discipline. So, for example, when I worked with the Attorney General's office and I stood up to train prosecutors, it was very helpful if I had a prosecutor with me. The same is true of law enforcement. The same is true of adult protective services. It's important that you have someone who not only speaks their language, but automatically has their trust as a member of their discipline. And so you've got to work out what will be best for your training and for that education, and ensure that you have enough time to co-train and that it's truly co-training and not just, here, I want you to say these 5 things. and do that. And then, do you have partners who could assist with the training? Are there people in your multidisciplinary team? Are there community partners who could assist with that? A lot of times, you might be able to have faith community or banks provide meals because you can't do so with grant funds, but perhaps somebody could provide coffee or bagels or things of that sort. Or are there other folks that can jump in and assist with that? I don't know where my mouse is. There we go. So when you're putting together your training structure, when you're looking at how is this going to work, how's it going to look, what you want to do is you want to decide if you're going to do it solo or if you're going to have a team, multiple or two or more. Design the training for adult learners. Think about how adults learn. They like practical things. They want to what's in it for me kind of deal. A lot of folks learn by doing, so you'd want to do case studies and you want to have conversations. You also want to draw on the participants' strengths and their past knowledge. So you don't want to start off by assuming they know absolutely zero. You want to engage them either in conversation or a survey or something that that shows that you respect what they're bringing to the educational experience, and then do some type of evaluation, and we'll get to that in a little bit, that seeks their feedback and lets them know that their opinions of your work and the work what you just presented is valuable. You want it really to be interactive. And I apologize that so far we haven't done too much of that. But lecture, a lot of people learn by hearing, and then large and small group activities where they can talk together, and then video. Ours is a electronic community, an electronic world where a video, a 3-minute video can do a lot more than a 15-minute lecture oftentimes. But always design it so that there are different parts of that.
Yeah. Can we go back just for a
Yes.
second, Lisa? I just wanted to add,
Please do.
lecture can also be in the form of a panel. It doesn't have to be just one speaker. It can be a panel. And it might give a broader sense of the topic if you do it that way. And I also want to add that some examples of some activities that you might use, role playing is a good way for people to immediately work through the concepts.
Just don't call it role play.
Yes. Okay, we're going to call it practicing some skills. So they can learn to just to immediately use what they've just learned. And sometimes it's easier to retain it or remember if you actually play with it a little bit. Debate and discussion is another activity. You want, as long as there's a commitment to learning and not just to, make your point and make sure everybody understands your point. But a give and take is a really important activity to do. If anytime you do activities, just make sure that you build in some time to debrief afterwards so people can walk away with the message you want them to walk away from the activity. Now I'm ready for the next slide.
Well, one of the things in terms of the panel, if you want to educate your community or a discipline about the work of your multidisciplinary team, and it's one person standing up there talking, how much stronger a presentation would it be if you had 3 or 4 people and you did a mock case, so that everybody could see the kinds of things that your team does, and then ask questions. I mean, how much stronger would that be if they got an actual snapshot of your work, and how exciting would that be?
Yeah, I like that activity too. Yeah. Okay, so now we've talked about how you figure out what your training is going to be about and what the structure of it might look like. If you're doing a virtual, of course, you've got the confines of Zoom. But if you are doing it in person, there are some things to consider. Arranging the seats so people can connect with each other. If it's a smaller group, you might want to consider a big U shape so everyone can see each other. They're close enough to be able to hear each other and really interact. If it's a larger group, you might have round tables with maybe 6 to 8 at a table, something like that. So there is some smaller connection going on, but everyone can still pay attention to the whole event. Having a trainer station, and the reason we have station in quotation marks is because you don't really want to have just a podium there. There needs to be a spot where trainers can put their stuff down, maybe their notes, put their timer, however they're keeping track of their time there, etc. But you don't want to stand behind a podium or have the speakers sitting at a table and possibly having side conversations, whatever. But you do need to have some kind of a spot for them to center themselves at. Microphones are really important. There's always, I think I'm going to say 100%, if I can, of the time, there's always a person that says, no, I have a loud voice. I don't need, when you're trying to get to them with the microphone. It's not just that. It's not just volume. There are a lot of people that have assistive devices, and they only pick up on the frequency of the microphone. So it doesn't matter how loud you are, you're still going to have the problem that they can't hear. So then you have all these people who won't admit they can't hear. So just make a rule in the very beginning and then model it by you always using the microphone and have enough so you don't have to run around the room with just one. You can maybe have a colleague running back and forth in the audience. And consider accessibility. The general rule is like 4 feet between all these round tables if you have that. So someone in a wheelchair or something like that can get around the room. But just always consider how easy it is to get to their spot. So if people in a wheelchair, they don't always have to sit on the very end because that's the only place they fit. So just keep that in mind. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go into the gallery view and stop sharing for a moment and ask you if you guys could, we said we want to really hear what your learned experiences and you guys nobody said they have done 0 training. So what are the things that you noticed in the worst trainers? And I'm already going to tell on myself, people who screw up with the technical, like I couldn't get the slides to advance. Okay, that's a quality of the worst trainer. So I'm going to just get myself out there right now. Okay, so what have you guys seen? Can you come off mute and tell us? Worst qualities. You guys have all had excellent trainers. Hey, Catherine.
Hey there. So I would say when somebody is extremely monotone and it's kind of boring and it's just verbatim reading off the slides. All of us know PowerPoint, but when you're just saying exactly what's on the PowerPoint with the same cadence and also, I don't know, I'm a little quirky. I'm like, I need a smile or something,
Yeah. Well, you got a smiley bunch here today because I know the 3 of us smile a lot. So yeah, definitely. And I want to jump in with Linnell in the chat, said, when I don't practice good cutting off skills when we get sidetracked. Oh, that's such a good one, Linnell. Yeah, and thanks for modeling that too. I should have said, if you're more comfortable throwing stuff into the chat, please do. Otherwise, come off mute and share with us. What have you seen with terrible trainers?
All right, Shelley, you got something?
Yeah, I would say that trainers who kind of become a potted plant. They're not moving around the room. They're just standing there like they're chained to the podium, and they don't move around. As older adults, we have to kind of have something that keeps our attention, and when you're moving around the room, that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We'll just take one more. Either or in the chat or come off mute.
Well, I had one of my first trainings in this one particular job. I was training law enforcement. I thought I had a law enforcement partner who would be there. Uh, First of all, he wasn't there, didn't even bother to show up. Second of all, I plugged in the PowerPoint and the projector, and it split the screen and switched it. So, like, you had 1, 2, 3, 4 on the slide, and it said 3, 4, 1, 2, and the pictures were cut in half and all this kind of stuff. And on top of that, I had people in the back reading the newspaper, and so it was just it was a tough one to try to work out. So I just ditched the PowerPoint and went with looking over some of their policies and procedures, and got their attention by saying we were going to talk about how some of these policies and procedures made them feel. And they rolled their eyes and groaned. And I said, okay, gotcha. So we're not going to do that, but we are going to talk about how these policies and procedures help or hinder your work. And that was very fun to have that gotcha kind of thing with them when they were having a
Yeah.
difficult time. But I would say one of the things that makes it hard for presenters is when you either have a hostile audience or a know-it-all presenter who doesn't let other presenters get a word in edgewise and won't even pause for questions.
Yeah, I like your example of a good save, good save. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. Let's share what are some qualities of really good presenters that you've experienced, really good ones. Catherine says smiles.
Hi.
Hi,
I
Stephanie.
have a training partner. Sometimes we do trainings together at conferences. And she is a prosecutor. And she is like the most engaging, energetic person ever. And I always tell her, I don't like presenting with you because I'm so boring and introverted, and you're so extroverted and out there. And I mean, she just gives drama. There's a lot of drama because she's telling a story typically about a case. But her name is Allison Martin, and if you ever want her, she is just one of the best presenters I've ever seen. Very just engaging and energetic.
Cool. And my guess is that you're a great complement together, because if you both were really high energy, it might be too much. So my guess is that you guys really play off each other.
Well,
I'm
that's
gonna
what
guess.
she says, but I feel insecure.
Oh,
I just
yeah,
want to have her personality.
yeah. So turning to the chat again, Catherine shared presenters who have engaged with the audience, and Serena, they can confirm and redirect or cut off wayward responders. Yes, that is an art. Absolutely. I love that one. Okay, Lisa, I think we can go back.
You say that like that's an easy thing.
And we did that one.
Sorry, my mouse is acting up. There we are.
Okay. So this is something, all these steps we're going through, sometimes people hurry through these steps trying to assess what the training should be or what the room looks like, but all of these are really important things to be very intentional about when you're setting them up. And another one is choosing your speakers and making sure that everyone who should be represented is there. You don't want to have a training that all about us without us. You need to make sure that that individuals who might have shared experiences are also involved in this. Making sure that the speakers contribute to a welcoming environment? For example, are they empathetic listeners? Especially if someone, it happens a lot that somebody shares something very devastating during a training, and you have to have a speaker that can still acknowledge that pain but still move on. So it's quite a skill there. Somebody who asks for clarification if they need it, that creates a welcoming environment. If you feel like if somebody says something and you don't quite understand it, you want to give them the opportunity to expand upon it. So that makes somebody feel, wow, what my contribution is definitely being valued, and it creates that welcoming thing. And also, if someone says something that maybe you don't agree with, you can say something like, it sounds like you've dealt with a difficult situation, and then just move on. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to say, yeah, you're right or you're wrong. You can just acknowledge their thought and then move on. And all those things Lisa already covered with making sure that your speaker is the right speaker for your audience, definitely. If you're utilizing a team, the team members should complement each other. Khi-Lynn, Lisa, and I work together all the time, so we're really comfortable with each other. And most of the time, if the trainers are like that, you can feel it. You know that they like each other and they work together. So that's important. Making sure that they have the relative subject matter expertise. I'm underlining it. Lisa talked about this. It's really important. And that each member is comfortable being a trainer. Next slide. So if you do go with the team approach, these are some considerations. Everybody should learn the material. You should not just focus on your slides, but focus on the whole presentation. So you really have a whole feel. You've noticed that I've referred back to stuff that Khi-Lynn or Lisa have said. It's really good to pull it all together by knowing all the material and being comfortable with it. The second one I've got to work on, ensuring team members are familiar with the technology. Technology is really important because it's the way we get our message across. And so it's good to have a backup. Lisa's always my backup. It's always good to have a backup, somebody who's more comfortable with it that can step in and help you. It's also holding more practice sessions. You might think you don't need to practice, but you really do, even if that practice is not going through the PowerPoint, but like talking it out and talking timing, etc. And becoming familiar with all the content, because sometimes people get sick or some emergency happens, especially a lot of you guys are direct service providers and you cannot predict who's going to walk in the room. Oh, I've got a webinar I'm doing in 3 minutes. I'm sorry that you're, having a crisis right now. You can't. So it's really important for all the presenters to know all the information. So if you have to step in, it can happen seamlessly. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa.
Well, I just wanted to say that it might not always be if this is like the training we're doing right now. This is a one-time kind of deal. It's not like we're going to do 5 of the same trainings in 5 different places. But even so, Khi-Lynn and Martie and I got together and kind of talked through what our slides would be and what we would say and where it needed to go in the presentation. And Khi-Lynn said this about that, and then that made me move this to that. And so even if you're not actually practicing, and though I would say if it's the first time you've trained, there's something to be said for lining your cats and dogs up and teaching them about multidisciplinary teams, because it's important that that you practice saying the words that you're planning on saying, so that your body has that memory, so that you know what you're going to be saying, and you're not spending the whole time going so no, that just drives people crazy so much that they will start to count how many times you say over the course of your presentation, as I have done. Okay, so let's talk about establishing the goals of the training. We say that they should be SMART goals, and that's not about intelligence. It's about having specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-oriented goals. So if you want to say, um, by the end of the session, people will know what types of training they can have within their multidisciplinary teams. That's very specific. That's measurable. And if you think about, is that achievable? Yes, because Khi-Lynn spent a really good amount of time on that aspect, showing you the different ways that you can do that within your team. Is it relevant? Does it matter? Is it a tangent in the middle of your training, or does it all hang together? You want to ensure that it is linear, that it makes sense, and that it is interwoven. And then time oriented. I think of that in two different ways. You're not trying to teach an entire book on facilitation and how to be a good facilitator in a 15-minute presentation. That is not a time-oriented kind of thing. Or you're not teaching about multidisciplinary teams in such a way that it's going to take you 3 years of different trainings to see the outcome of what you were trying to teach them. So, how do you look at that? Are they time oriented in terms of that snapshot? And then the main thing is, you do not want to have 20 different goals for an hour-long presentation. Even for a whole day presentation, you're not going to want to do that as well. Think about 2 to 4 goals that are those SMARTs, that are succinct and clear, because the clearer that your goals are, the clearer your presentation can be. And it's important that that if you set the goals first, then put together the presentation, go back to the goals to ensure that the presentation checks those boxes. If you put the presentation together and then come up with the goals for it, then you have to go back to what was asked of you for that training to ensure that you're meeting the needs of that community. So then evaluation, you really want to pay attention to how you're doing before, during, and after. Thinking about it before, you could be talking about needs assessment. As we said earlier, sometimes your agencies will do a needs assessment and say, here are some of the gaps of things that people need to hear. Make sure you sit down. If you are redoing training that you've done previously, make sure you sit down with that and ensure that you don't have statistics or data that are 4, 5, 6, 10 years old. You want to make sure that it's updated and current and applicable. I can't tell you the number of times at national conferences that I have attended, some national speakers, and it's the very same presentation that I saw them do 3 other times. And that's so frustrating to do that. And then during it, I talked about earlier, figuring out what's already known. What are they coming, what knowledge are they bringing to that workshop, to that presentation? You can do a survey ahead of time. You can have that opening conversation with the participants and the learners. The thing that I really like to do when we're co-training is to watch the trainers and the presenters. You really want to pay attention to the interaction between them. I feel that there's a real sacred space in education between the teacher and the learner, and a real gift that we come together to share with each other. But watch how both the trainers and the participants interact around questions. Are they Are the questions accusatory? Do the participants get defensive? That's not helpful. So you want to make sure that the questions and how they respond are things that enhance learning and don't put people on the spot. And then afterwards, you can do a survey immediately where folks fill something out. You can do it where you send a survey to people 3 months later. You can have a conversation with your co-trainers about how they feel it went. And always, always, always revise the training based on that feedback. Oftentimes we'll get, this training was wonderful, it was too short. Well, sometimes you've got control over that and sometimes you don't. So if you consistently get that it was too short, are you trying to pack too much into your training? And can you cut some of that so you can go deeper into some of those things? Look for changes in the learners after that training. So those goals that you have, look for those changes and see by talking to them later on or by talking to the people who work with them to see if the behaviors did change based on those trainings. And to me, that's the most gratifying thing when folks, come up 6 months later and say, I was in this situation and I thought back to the training and you said blah, 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 blah. And I thought, okay, that's what I need to do here. And, that to me is really gratifying. So we have another poll question, Martie. All right, what are y'all planning to put together here? So let's say based on this training, what are you thinking about?
Martie,
you're
muted.
I'm trying to be good with background noise, and here I am. It all over the board. Internal community training first, but it's pretty even there on what people are planning.
All right. Well, I'm gonna. You know how to reach us. We've got 10 minutes, so we have time for questions or comments if folks are trying to put together some of their trainings or have specific questions. What are your thoughts?
And I also want to take a few minutes for an evaluation.
Well, we can't very well skip that since we just talked about how it was important.
Yeah, Serena.
So, what do you do when the purpose of the training, which has been determined by someone else, that the questions that the audience has is kind of to an adjacent topic, and so
a lot of times,
I'm used to kind of just going with the flow of what people are interested in, but when it's someone else's, when they put it together, that you can sort of see the person tense up, like, this isn't what we're supposed to be talking about, this isn't where this is supposed to be going. And so either way, it feels like you're being rude to either the audience or to the person.
I make it a little lighthearted. I'll say, that's a great question and a whole different training. So if you want to hear more about that, call me and I'll come back. But let's get back to what we covered today, and do it in somewhat of a lighthearted, boy, that would take a whole nother 2 hours. Are y'all good staying for that long? you know, and then everybody laughs and you go, well, okay, so if not, then, you know, you know, I tend to use humor as a way to deflect some of those because a lot of times the questions are pointed as a way to argue with the trainers and the speakers, and that can be difficult too.
Or it's just that they want their question, you know, they
Yeah.
have their scenario and they just want that addressed. You know.
Right.
I love
Sorry,
that
Martie.
response, Lisa. Definitely. I've been at trainings where that's happened. But some of that you can maybe prevent by beforehand. If you make sure your materials or your advertisement for the training is accurate, and that's actually what you're going to be covering. And so people know walking in what kinds of things you're covering. Not to say it's not going to still happen, because it happens all the time, but definitely. And in the vein of, I never leave a training without learning something from the attendees and the learners. I'm just looking at the chat, and a couple of you brought up that point of cutting off skills. If someone's is derailing the conversation, and it's difficult to do that sometime without them, you don't want to shame them. But it is an art to be able to do that. And sometimes it's important to wait until there's a natural pause and jump in really quick. So you're not interrupting, but you're jumping in really quick and acknowledging that was a really good addition to the conversation. And now, anyone else have any questions? Like now, does anybody else have any questions or comments?
Shelley.
Sorry, I'm like looking where I don't know how to raise my hand. Anyway, just with your experience working with MDTs across the US, when you're talking about trainings, you know, the sole purpose of a multidisciplinary team is to do case reviews. So if you are having, you know, a monthly case review and you really want to focus that, have you found that when people do some of those internal trainings, that they're keeping it to like 15, 20 minutes, just a real kind of skimming over? Or are they keep reserving that and being protective of that 1 hour for case review and then adding maybe a second opportunity later on in the month to do quarterly trainings or monthly? Or what have you kind of like a kind of an environmental scan? What have you seen that predominantly seems to be what has been implemented?
So I think it depends on the dynamics of your E-MDT. Some people may receive a lot of referrals for cases, so they have the opportunity to kind of spread it out. They also have the opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to have 2 monthly meetings, and then I can dedicate 1 to training. Or some people, yes, do have to keep it to a tight window and say, okay, I only have 30 minutes for a training or cross training. I think when you have a smaller window, it's best to stick to maybe cross trainings or something that can be internal rather than having special guests or something like that come in, because generally those types of training takes a little bit longer. But it really just depends on the dynamics of the team. Some teams really have kind of a slow start, and so they utilize that time to kind of either do case studies, review information, and provide trainings, and then they're able to get into case discussions. So it really just depends on the dynamics of your team and where you are. People who are just starting that have no cases, they decide to do trainings and case studies in the beginning. And then people who do have a lot of cases, they then may have the opportunity to say, okay, I can dedicate once a month or a meeting time for a particular training. So it really just depends on the dynamics of that E-MDT.
Mm-hmm. Is there anyone else here that that has done it in a certain way that you want to share? What's worked for you in your E-MDT? Okay, I just thought.
I've got one.
Yeah.
So we kind of built into the grant that we have quarterly educational programs for the MDT team. So we do every quarter something related to financial exploitation, because that's what our grant is about. So I've just built it in quarterly, and obviously that's a special guest every time. I've never attempted a training like within the meeting. It's usually a totally separate day of a dedicated time.
And if anyone had any questions about how to do this, we also have kind of like a flow sheet of how people were able to either implement it within their meeting time or have it outside of their meeting time. So if you have any issues or, you know, anything around being able to bring that into your team meeting, please reach out to the center and we can help you with that flow chart.
Any other comments or questions?
You might want to go ahead and put up the survey.
Oh, okay. While Lisa's doing that, any other comments?
I don't have it.
Oh, you don't have. I thought you said you were going to go ahead and do it. And I thought, I didn't know co-hosts could do that.
No.
Okay. Well, I'm going to then.
Okay. Any other questions? Don't forget our PLG, the first Wednesday in June will be Deanna Newsom, our grant manager, who'll be able to talk to us about what she may or may not know about the state of our grants and answer some questions. And again, we encourage you, if you have questions you'd like specifics on, to get those to us ahead of time so that we can get them to her so she has time to prepare that.
There's 3 questions. I just launched the second one.
Everyone.
Thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Y'all take care and reach out if you have any questions for us.